Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is April 1st. That makes it April Fool's Day. Be careful out there. Hopefully everybody kind of got the memo about maybe jokes about serious stuff like coronavirus. Not everything about coronavirus, but dumb stuff that will send people in the wrong direction because it seems plausible, but isn't actually funny when you find out it's not true. We want to watch out for those jokes today. Already seen a few flying around, so not everybody got the memo, but I don't know. I never really loved April Fool's Day a whole lot anyway, so no loss for me. April 1st, though, 2020, obviously in the future, when we replay our episodes, I think you'll be able to tell which April 1st it is by the COVID-19 coverage. But we're ready to roll today with another show. Greg Dworkin will be with us, as Bill notes, all the way from Portland, Maine. Daily Coast Radio is live now. Kagro X, that's me. You can reach me on Twitter during the show, and Dr. Dreg Dworkin, as we like to say, especially on April Fool's Day. Greg Dworkin, of course, bringing you the latest pandemic updates from the president's new senior medical advisor, the old check notes meme. It's Mr. Pillow. Yes, I guess apparently the My Pillow guy, somewhere I knew that he was a presidential favorite for some reason, I guess because he gave a lot of money to the president. That's usually what does it. But he, too, now thrown in the advisory mix on the COVID-19 crisis. And I didn't see enough of the press conferences in which he participated to know why that is. Perhaps one of you know and can let us know, and we'll share that with the rest of us who are likewise, I'm sure, in the dark. Among such luminaries as A-Rod, of course, baseball players, pillow manufacturers, and, other stuff. One of the first press conferences where he brought out corporate CEOs, the corporations, to some extent, made some sense. They were large retailers who were going to remain open as lifelines to people in our self-quarantines. There were, of course, other large retailers who were going to lend their parking lots at some point to who, I don't know, but for use as drive-through testing centers. Does everybody remember that promise, by the way? There were going to be drive-through testing centers everywhere using the massive numbers of COVID-19 tests that were being produced at the orders of the president by pharmaceutical companies around the country and around the world. And so far it's resulted, of course, just like everything else, in about a handful of parking lots being given over to this use, but testing at much lower rates than anyone expected for a drive-through, certainly. And, whatever, because yesterday the president admitted that there were going to be hundreds of thousands of deaths, and so now he's serious, somber Trump, and is totally competent, April Fools, I guess, to the task ahead of him. But I don't know what to tell you. None of what he's promising is coming up, and that's no surprise to anyone who's watched anything he's done. These have been several dozen episodes of How to Read a Trump Comment. There are no drive-through testing centers everywhere. They aren't delivering on the number of tests that they said they were going to deliver on, but have no hesitancy about getting on the air and talking about how wonderfully they've performed in producing the tests. There is some news. I did read somewhere, and I'll check into Pocket and see if I can't turn it up, that somebody has beaten the 7-minute test. We read about that the other day. Abbott Labs had beaten the 7-minute test with a 5-minute test. And so now it's like the 6-minute abs situation from Something About Mary. We got people trying to beat that. And I understand that there is a 2-minute test out there now. So, very exciting. Save 5 minutes off of the 7 and 3 minutes off of the 5. It's always good to do these things faster. And I don't know when those things roll out, but those are some exciting news about that. Let me see. It's in here somewhere, I am sure. But other things to catch up on today. Still captivated, am I, with the story of the fundraiser, the Republican fundraiser turned war against COVID-19 profiteer, who has somehow put himself allegedly in control of the largest global supply chain for COVID medical supplies, the masks, the gowns, the gloves, the N95s, etc., etc. Mike Gula and Blue Flame Medical, LLC, formed, as they say in the article we read yesterday, it says, this was on Friday, so last Monday in Delaware. The company celebrated its 1-week anniversary 2 days ago and has already put itself somehow in control of the largest global supply chain of COVID medical supplies. And I would like to know how, and I'm wondering if we'll ever find out. The president was absolutely certain that somebody was stealing this equipment somewhere along the line. And even Congressman Frank Pallone, a Democrat of New Jersey, seemed like he was saying he'd been hearing reports of shipments that had reportedly been dispatched by the federal government, at least to New Jersey, but which never made it to its destination. Just somehow was waylaid along the way, and nobody knows who or why diverted who diverted these things or why they were diverted. No explanation given. So, maybe it has something to do with this guy. I'm just curious about, we're several weeks into the crisis ourselves. At this point, I would have expected, maybe under a different president, but I would have expected that the largest global supply chain for COVID necessary medical supplies would belong to or be affiliated with the United States government in some way, but it's not. Mike Gula has got it in a week, which raises questions about why the United States government wasn't able to do the same in 2 to 3 months. But, we're never getting answers like that. But yesterday, Donald Trump was very sad about hundreds of thousands of Americans dying on his watch. So it's all good now. Greg Dworkin is with us to, I'm sure critique a part of that, no doubt. And whatever other updates you may have gathered. Good morning, Greg. How are you? Things okay up there?
Things are okay.
Right,
I was just looking at the death models that the White House published yesterday, and they're not going to be okay soon, but they're okay now.
All right.
But we have 3 major big topics to talk about. Death models, the mask situation, which I think we covered on Monday.
Yes.
And then politics.
Okay.
So which one do you want to do?
We'll
do them all, but what order do you want to do them? Door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3?
It's hard to say I want to start with death models. How about, is there more about masks? Everyone enjoyed that segment in particular.
I thought that was helpful. And, what's happening is that there's now reports that CDC is changing their philosophy about what to suggest.
Yes.
And our friend of the show and just friend in general, Lindsay Barrestein, who's a reporter, yes, and filmmaker, investigative journalist, had this very brief thread on masks in response to Jeet here, Jeet, who said on the mask fiasco, what if public health authorities said from the start, masks will help slow down the pandemic, but there's a shortage, a shortage. We want frontline medical people to get them first, but are pushing for mass production, social distance, and we'll have them soon. What if they said that?
That would have been great.
And Lindsay said, well, they did. They explained that they were discouraging the general public from wearing medical-grade masks because they were needed by frontline healthcare providers. They did say that up front.
Okay.
They couldn't recommend universal improvised mask wearing because it's unproven, and improvised masks come with risks of their own. We talked about that on Monday. If you don't take them off right, they actually could make things a bit worse. And this is also a brand new virus, and we're learning more about how it spread. At first, experts didn't think there was significant asymptomatic transmission. Now we know there is. So guidance will evolve to reflect that. And I think that's absolutely right.
All right,
that's
then.
the right way to look at it. So that's what happened. And you could be mad at CDC for a lot of things. I'm far more angry about the testing fiasco than I am about the mask situation. There truly are not enough masks for healthcare workers. And the advice to do your own is okay, but understand that it can help a little bit. But it's really a combination of social distancing, washing your hands, and homemade masks that makes a difference. And which of those three factors is the more important one is unclear. The data we do have is from flu. And if you do all of those things, it helps. So do all of those things. But I think it's a little misplaced to be angry about advice about masks. One reason people are like that is simply because, it's something you could have done yourself, and therefore something to be angry about, whereas a lot of this other stuff is stuff officials should have done somewhere or hospitals should have done somewhere, so it really is not you. But this is something I could have done, and you didn't tell me to do it, and so I'm more angry about that, even though it's actually not the most important factor in terms of what happens next. The most important factor in terms of what happened is testing screwed us, and 6 weeks worth of incompetence and not paying attention screwed us. And then when it did come to Trump's attention, his focus was, is, and will be, well, how does this affect my reelection? That's far more important than CDC advice about masks for the public, in my view.
I would do agree, I think. I guess that probably encapsulates the way I feel about the masks. I would have liked to have been directed to get to work on them already.
Yeah, I would have liked to have known that there was asymptomatic spread to this degree from the very beginning.
Sure, yes.
We didn't.
That would have been great. But
that would have been great. But
and I can excuse, like, all right, well, this is something you really don't know about.
And by the way, I had a suggestion to editors with just a little bit of pushback from the public. And my suggestion to editors is simply this. Why don't you have the political reporters who are really good at this use their expertise and go find out why things went wrong in the White House and CDC and everywhere else. They're really, really good at that. And have the science and health people at the press conferences asking the questions. Don't do it the other way around. That's what they're doing now. And so what happens is when Trump has a big press conference and reveals something that we've already known and we've been talking about for weeks.
Yes.
This is way bigger than you are covering. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of deaths here.
Yeah.
And they just discovered it yesterday because Trump had a press conference, so he said it.
I have a hard time understanding. I've heard the stories. And
so the tone was somber yesterday compared to all the other time. The tone was somber because what happened during that press conference, which I watched for 2 frickin' hours.
You watched that one, huh? Good.
Is that for the first hour, well, because it was important. And for the first hour, every time Trump was asked something, he said, well, I'm going to defer to Fauci. I'm going to defer to Birx, Dr. Fauci, and Debbie, as he calls them.
Oh. Well,
because like Dr. Birx is a lady person.
Yes, right.
So
real doctor.
Every time he, for the first hour, was asked a question, he'd say, well, I don't want to answer that. I want them to answer that. And so they were somber, and so the tone was somber. Yeah, and then in the second hour, Trump then got the microphone back, unfortunately, and then went into an hour's worth of Festivus about how impeachment screwed him and how he hates people because they impeached him. And basically, if you listen to the political reporters, they're telling you what they're good at telling you, which is he's really trying to screw the blue states, and he's really trying to get all the PPEs and the ventilators to Florida because Florida is important for his election. That's the stuff the political reporters are good at covering.
They got it.
But in terms of the science of what to do now, what do we do now? What is the best advice for the public to do now? That's not political reporter stuff. That's science and health reporters, and that's who should be at those briefings.
Yes. Ordinarily, I would say, well, send them both. But no, we don't want to crowd.
Well, that's the pushback. Well, why don't we send them both? Because it's social distancing. There isn't that much room.
You can't do that.
If you actually saw the conference, the reporters were sitting 6 feet apart.
Yes. I guess if you have to make a choice between the two, I would say you've got it right.
Send a pool reporter for the political stuff, and then everybody else in there should be a science and health reporter so they could ask the right questions and don't get fooled by the BS.
Yeah.
For example, the important thing about that conference yesterday, now that we recognize that you have to tell the truth and that it's really important to tell people up front what's going on, and now that all of a sudden that's become the gold standard again, which is why the political reporters can't handle it. They simply can't handle yes or no, this is true, this is not true. They don't do that. In their world, all lying is marginally acceptable. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you don't call people on that. Because if you did that, you'd have to call them on everything they say. Well, hello,
no.
when we're talking about
Not
pandemic,
that.
life or death stuff, that's exactly the approach you should have. The approach you reject is exactly the approach you should have. And that's why you're doing such a shit job of it.
Oh, well, yeah, basically, I think that's true. The pandemic has suspended all all the rules about what we can say on the show.
Right. And I'm watching the reporters on Twitter congratulate themselves for doing such a good job, and they don't understand why the criticism is so harsh. They still don't get it. And what happened yesterday when Debbie Burke said, here's a graph, and we're talking about 100 to 240,000 deaths in the country over the coming months until May and June, and this is best case. This is what happens if Florida actually shuts the beaches down and Mississippi stops praying, or at least in addition to praying, also closes the schools and does social distancing, and the governor doesn't keep overruling local people who are trying to do the right thing. Yes. If you do everything right, which we're not, this is best case. If you don't do those things, it's worse. Is that somber?
That's larger.
Yes. Is it new? No, it's not. We've known this for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, people are hiding in their houses because we knew that.
Yes, and we'll talk about the politics and the polling on that. But the fact of the matter is that what's so infuriating is when the reporters all of a sudden discover, hey, this is really serious.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you know that that's not how it happened. They knew that they were serious.
That was only the part of the press conference where Birx and Fauci spoke. And then Trump gets the microphone back and goes back to Trump. So when you say there's a new tone, there's a new somber, no, it isn't. It was for the first hour when he didn't talk. When he did talk, it's the same old tone. Don't give me this, he became president pivot crap.
Oh, please. Well, that's old news. But yeah, he's a new tone. His tone is, he sounded exactly like Fauci.
Tone.
Yeah. He's doing impressions of Fauci. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see enough of the press conference to know that was.
But that's what happened, and that's true. And I can give you specific examples of how that came across, which is absolutely infuriating. Soledad O'Brien had a good take on it all, and so did Jay Rosen. Jay Rosen wrote, "Anyone who says he's now soberly accepting the reality of the pandemic, no, he switched claims from we're doing a fantastic job, the virus is like 15 people, to we're doing a fantastic job. If we do nothing, it would be millions dead, 2 million. I'm going to hold it to 100,000. Yeah. I'm doing a great job." And then Jay Rosen adds, those calling him sober are the marks.
I guess so. Jeez.
Soledad O'Brien, an interesting thing to watch for. Political reporters are leading the pandemic coverage. They will cover it in the bad political framing, the horse race, who won the day, how they appeared, did they seem strong, not, this is true, this is false, which is what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel Dale. You know Daniel Dale.
Sure.
Right? Daniel Dale for Toronto Star and then for CNN currently tracks everything Trump says and where the lies are not the lies. And he was forced to actually change his approach yesterday. He said rather than the usual barrage of specific false claims, this briefing has featured a dishonest overall narrative, a Trump effort to cast himself as the leader who stood strong against a faction that downplayed the severity of the virus. And he said that during the conference. Other people, lots of people, they were saying we should do nothing. But I said, no, we have to do everything.
And this can't hit anybody as a surprise because it was the other day that he was saying, I was the first one to say it was a pandemic. I knew even before that.
Exactly. Sam Stein. Yes, Trump's tone is different today. We're all forgetting that he had a 2-day stretch where he was super somber before declaring he wanted the country reopened by Easter.
Yes. Right.
I mean,
I don't know how anybody can forget
don't
Easter.
fall for this nonsense. And by the way, the public isn't, and I'll show you data on that.
Good.
But let's go back to what they actually covered at the conference. And what they covered at the conference is this University of Washington health model.
Okay.
And projects up to 240,000 coronavirus deaths in the U.S., even with mitigation efforts, says the headline at the Washington Post. And, of course, it's not Trump's projection. It's modeling from Washington State. If you go to the website, you can pull your own state and look and see what the projection is. So let's do that, and let's pick, because we have so many people we love in Virginia, let's look at Virginia.
Okay.
Now, the important thing about the model that's really helpful is that if you pick a different state, and let's start with New York, because New York's famous for what's going on right now. Okay. This model predicts that the peak resource use is going to be on April 9th in 8 days. But in Virginia, peak resource day is not going to be till May 20th, 49 days from now.
Oh.
Different places have different time frames. Connecticut's 14 days.
That's weird.
That's because it starts in New York. It's not weird. It starts in New York, and then it goes up 684 and gets off exit 9 on 84 and then comes to Danbury. I mean, all illnesses do that. We know that. So we're always a little bit behind New York. And every year, flu season and, viral gastroenteritis season, we always look to see what's happening in New York, and that can predict pretty accurately a week to 10 days later, we're going to see it up here in Connecticut. And that's exactly what happened with this virus.
All right.
People travel, and so they bring it with them. That's, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. So let's look at Virginia.
But yes. All right.
49 days until peak resource use on May 20th. Okay.
I'm busy that day.
And right now, if you look at this graph, have you pulled it up?
No, I'm still scrolling around looking for where today started.
All right. Let me put it right at the end so you can find it. Because, I send David 30,000 things. Don't blame him for not being able to find it. But click on that and then pull Virginia down as the pull down and then look at the graph.
All right. United States of America. Oh, Virginia. Terrific. I'm all the way at the bottom here. All right. Yes.
You got it?
Graph. Yeah.
Okay. There's a pull down, so you can just go right to Virginia.
I see.
And 49 days until peak resource use on May 20th. You see that part?
I do.
So there's a line that gives you how many beds are available. 6,581 hospital beds in Virginia.
There they are.
Right? And according to this graph, which is wrong, and I'll explain why it's wrong, is 6,154 beds needed.
Yes.
So according to this graph, which changes daily as new numbers are fed into it, this model suggests that there's enough beds in Virginia for when this peak hits in 49 days. Is the peak going to be in 49 days? No.
Oh.
Well, why do I say that? Because it's a question of testing. If you're not testing, you're not getting results. If you're not getting results, you're not feeding it into the model, so the model doesn't know you have more cases than you're reporting.
I see.
So places like New York that test and report a lot have big spikes, and they're going to hit their peak in 8 days. And places that don't test, according to this model, don't really have a problem. That doesn't mean it's correct. And as testing comes online, it changes every day. I was watching Connecticut over the last 3 or 4 days on this model, and Connecticut has just spiked because we just had a bunch of reports.
I see. Yes. Makes sense.
All right? You can pull Connecticut down and you can see that. But the point is, it's a model. According to this model, ICU beds needed, 918. ICU beds available in Virginia, 329. So you are short 589 beds, and that's before things get bad.
I see.
If you scroll down a little bit, that's just utilization. The next graph is deaths.
Okay.
All right, and the deaths are going to peak in about 6 weeks.
Yes, to the peak.
So
of
you
daily
have
deaths.
6 weeks to prepare. Places like Mississippi, Oklahoma, even Florida, which is a 1-month delay on this, according to the model, have time to prepare. It's not quite true because Florida isn't testing enough people, so they don't really know how much virus they have. And when they do, all of a sudden, the peak you said was a month ago is now 2 weeks from now.
You're lying.
You're not lying. The model changed because you get more data. It's exactly how you change your minds about masks.
Okay.
So that's how this works, and just so people should know and understand it.
That
And
makes sense
yet,
to us.
when you look at it, okay, it's telling you the average that they think is going to happen, and then they give you this plus or minus. It's like the margin of error on a poll. And the margin of error seems pretty big, pretty big. It's a purple monster mountain there.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Right? That's best case.
Terrific.
All right? If you want to look worst case, look at New York. New York has better modeling because it has better numbers.
Okay.
All right? So flip to New York, and what do you see? Not so good.
No.
Okay? They are just hitting their peak ventilator and ICU beds right now.
Yes.
Okay? And the number of beds they're going to need in a week far outstrips the number of beds they have. They have 13,000 beds. They're going to need 75,000. They're 62,000 beds short. That's why they're making the Javits Center. That's why they pulled that ship, a naval ship, into New York Harbor. That's 1,000 beds. The Javits Center, also a non-coronavirus facility now, has, however many they can create, 2,500 or 3,000 beds. That's great. They need 60,000. I just want people to understand the scope of what is coming. And that's why when I say the political reporters are looking at it as, oh, did this spin work or did this not work? They're not incorporating in their heads what is to come. They don't get it. And that's why they're the worst people in the world to be covering these press conferences.
Yeah. I mean, they're not used to seeing modeling that would be subject to change of that magnitude.
Well, again, that's why I keep referring it to polling. At least that's something they're familiar with. Margin of error. It may not be correct. It's an early exit poll. The numbers don't mean what they're going to mean later. They should understand that, but they don't.
Well, this is an order of magnitude greater in terms of the variance, I would think.
Right, but the concepts are the same.
Oh, well, they don't understand the concepts.
That tells you about their political reporting, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's why, as you say, you have science reporters who understand that this is explainable and
to understand what questions to ask. Okay. Now, on that New York model, go down and don't just look at the number of beds you're going to need. Look at the deaths.
No. Yeah, okay.
That's the red graph that's just below. And we're talking in peak, in April 11th, for example, there's going to be 840 deaths a day in New York State alone.
Yeah. That used to be all of Italy numbers a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Now, then it gets better.
Okay.
All right, so that bad stretch there is going to be for about a week. It's going to be rough. So everybody needs to understand that these next couple of weeks are going to be very, very difficult.
Yes, I'm afraid
we'll talk about the
don't.
politics after the break.
Yeah.
That's something you should have come away with. Of course he was somber. That doesn't make him all of a sudden now he's president.
No. And, of course, I think the political reporters will at least begin to understand that he was somber yesterday because he's beginning to realize that the states where people like him and vote for him are going to be furious very soon.
And that is not going to help his reelection. That's what he was somber about.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Okay, we're ready to dive back in with Greg Dworkin. Where did we leave off? The president is terrible. Right.
Well, the president just, had a eye-opening press conference, which at least will get people's attention. It might even get people's attention in red states. As much as I despise and loathe Trump and think he's doing a horrible job and is probably going to kill us all, I am grateful for the fact that there is coverage of this because he speaking to red states, especially on Fox, which did cover, the conference. In fact, Fox News during the day covered Andrew Cuomo's press conference yesterday, which I thought was great. People have to hear it, and so if they only believe it if it's on Fox, well, then put it on Fox so that they can believe it, because it's important that the country understands this.
Okay.
So the next question is, all right, well, how is all this playing? Well,
someone will call and tell us, I'm sure.
Yep, any moment.
All right, we'll wait that out. These are the things we all have to live with now.
Here's Politico.
Yes.
Poll: Trump's coronavirus bounce fizzles.
Okay.
This is not a surprise if you've listened to me. I told you this was a brief bounce, a little bump, and it's not really going to last. Fewer voters are pleased with the way the Trump administration has handled the COVID-19 outbreak. Wait till they find out that 250,000 of your neighbors are going to die. More voters say the Trump administration isn't doing enough to combat the virus. The survey conducted immediately before President Trump announced a 30-day extension of his physical and social distancing guidelines to slow the spread.
Yes.
Which apparently he did not because he was concerned about life. He was concerned about his polling numbers. And that's what the political reporters are good about reporting.
Yes.
Shows 47% of voters feel the administration isn't doing enough in response to the outbreak, greater than the 40% who feel that the administration is doing the right amount. 2 weeks ago, 43% said the administration wasn't doing enough. and 39% said it was doing the right amounts. Now more people have an opinion about it one way or the other. And it comes, the Politico story says, as other polls suggest, the positive marks Trump earned for his early response to the crisis are turning more negative. And we have some of that. One great example of how that happens, Mike Francesa, who does sports talk radio in New York City and is a well-known figure.
Yes.
And a great Trump supporter. I think when he was like 15 or 16 years old, Mike Francesa was the limo driver for Fred Trump.
Oh, well.
So his relationship with the Trump family goes back decades, and he's been an absolute staunch MAGA supporter. And he had a rant about the disconnect between what's happening in New York City, in his city, watching the 11 o'clock news and seeing the ambulances go by and Trump doing nothing, and had an epic rant about it.
Yes. Too long to play.
That's important for two reasons. One is that he has a big audience. Trump probably heard it, and that's probably what got him somber about the numbers.
Could be.
And the other is who Mike Francesa reaches and represents.
Yes.
Okay? And this is the Staten Island, Long Island, New Yorker.
Yeah.
Who goes, the cops, the firemen, the EMS people, who go to Ranger games, hockey, sit in the blue seats, or bleacher creatures at Yankee Stadium, and represent a certain demographic who are avid Trump supporters. But if he represents breaking from Trump over this, he represents a whole lot of other people breaking with Trump over this.
Yes.
That's the import of his
largely
rant.
True. It wasn't going to win New York, obviously, and
but that's not the
lose
point.
It by larger. But yeah, I mean, just ideologically, I don't know what his audience is like outside of New York, but yeah, you make an important
huge. I mean, if you've ever heard the term Vinny from the Bronx, first-time caller, long-time listener, that's Mike Francesa. That's where that comes from.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's who he's reaching, and those minds will change. And I imagine that there are local personalities who, one by one, will realize, hey, this is actually going to kill all of us as well, and eventually say the same thing. At least you hope they'll say the same thing. You don't hope that it'll kill them all, but you hope that they'll realize that it could.
Right. So back to the Politico piece here. A CNN SSRS survey released Monday shows Americans split evenly on whether the federal government has done a good or bad job handling the outbreak, and two Democratic polls conducted in recent days, Navigator, which we'll go over, and Daily Kos Civics, which we'll go over, show more respondents say they disapprove of the way Trump is handling the situation than the surveys conducted last week. That's despite Trump's previous polling bounce, as some Democratic and independent voters rallied behind him during the early days of the crisis. I promise you, if Trump gets somber and starts taking this seriously, I, as a voter, will approve of his action. That doesn't mean I'm ever going to vote for him. Don't mistake the one for the other. A separate morning consult tracking poll shows Trump net approval on handling coronavirus sliding 7 points off its high from March 20th. In the Politico morning consult poll, Trump's overall approval rating is unchanged at 45 and 52 disapprove. But voters are increasingly worried about the coronavirus. 60% say they're very concerned, up from 53 last week. Wait till after this press conference. Okay? And Trump's ratings pale in comparison to those for the governors of the various states. A combined 62% say their state's governor has done an excellent or good handling of the crisis. If you look at Andrew Cuomo's number, that's a bounce.
Yes, that's true. And that's the rally
he went from 40 to 7.
State flag you would expect to see.
While Daily Kos poll finds Civics finds a majority of Americans disapprove of Trump's coronavirus response, and 57% think the government acted too slow to respond. Now, maybe the best take on this is actually from Ann Seltzer, the Iowa pollster, who just did a national poll for Grinnell. Okay.
Yeah.
And she finds that Trump is 48-48 on his job rating, compared to 43-51, that's the rally effect. That's the little bump he's getting, a 4 or 5 point bump, not the 20-point bump everybody else is getting for governor. But he still trails Joe Biden, which is the point. Same thing Fox News poll found. Trump leads Sanders by a point, but Biden beats Trump 47-43. Okay. And so Nick Gorovich, who is doing the Navigator polling, has today's findings out, which supports this. For the fifth consecutive day, we see the public split on Trump's handling of the crisis, a dip from earlier polling, and aligning with that Politico story I just read with you.
Yes.
And I said to Nick, well, when Trump does the right thing and listens to Fauci and Birx, the Democrats will say approve. That doesn't mean we're voting for him. And Nick said, well, the last slide of today's release profiles those which approve on coronavirus, but not overall, which supports your hypothesis, he said to me.
Okay.
And most of coronavirus bump comes from Democrats. The 7% of Americans who have disapproved of Donald Trump's performance overall, but approve the handling of coronavirus, may be a difficult audience for the president to keep support long term. Darn right.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have that support to begin with. So long term, it also won't be there.
Right. So other things that Nick noted in his polling, it's getting more personal. 17% say they know somebody's been infected, a new high. The number's 29 in highly infected states. 65% of Americans are worried about being unable to visit a sick family member.
Yes,
and
that's a
public
huge
focusing
issue.
most on the healthcare consequences, not the economy. And Trump is underwater by 10 points on the healthcare approval part of it.
Yes.
And perhaps most importantly for our purposes, talking about what a dipshit he is, 56% of Americans say Trump's response to the pandemic has been chaotic, 54% erratic, 44% honest, 44% competent. That 44 is going to change. Down.
Okay. Yes. I would think so.
Okay. So we have that. Now, what are the Republicans trying to do in response to this? Spin it as, well, it's because of impeachment. Impeachment distracted him.
That's incredible. Nobody's buying that.
Nobody's buying it. There's a piece of Mother
It's
Jones
really
about
not
how he's
working.
doing that. This one happens to be from the Washington Post, written by one George Conway, you may have heard of.
Yes.
Married to Kellyanne Conway. Still, for
Inexplicably,
reasons
yes.
unclear. Impeachment didn't distract from coronavirus preparations. Trump did. There should be shame enough in orchestrating the acquittal of an impeached president who, in order to extort help from his reelection campaign, unlawfully withheld security aid to an ally. By the way, all that stuff's still true.
Yes.
Shame enough in turning the Senate impeachment trial into a sham by refusing to hear a single live witness. Also true. But it turns out Mitch McConnell was just getting started. On Tuesday, he added to the disgrace by claiming that impeachment distracted officials from dealing with the coronavirus. Talking to Hugh Hewitt, of course, McConnell said the virus came up while we were, tied down the impeachment trial, and I think it diverted the attention of the government, which is gaslighting of the highest order. Leave aside the president now claims he presciently felt it was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic.
Yes.
Therefore, what McConnell said was untrue, if that's so, which it isn't, and that he always treated the Chinese virus very seriously,
Yes.
although he stopped calling it the Chinese virus after he had a discussion with China.
Yeah. Once he talked to President Xi on the phone, that was over.
He stopped. Tom Cotton hasn't stopped, but he stopped.
No, Tom Cotton.
Look at the calendar. The
Head is
impeachment
in the
trial
clouds.
ended on February 5th. In reality, it was over before it even started, thanks in part to McConnell. And while some lawyers in the executive branch in Congress were working on impeachment, Trump managed to get to Mar-a-Lago at least 4 times, working on a few rounds of golf along the way, 5 campaign rallies around the country during the impeachment trial. He had plenty of time. He wasn't distracted. It's garbage.
Yes, that at least is clearly not working. I don't know anybody who believes that, who's a serious person. And I mean, even among Republicans, I have not really found anybody that I think of as a serious person who says, yeah.
Here's a better take, and this is from The Guardian. The missing 6 weeks, how Trump failed the biggest test of his life. Again, this is the stuff political scientists should be covering.
True.
This is the stuff that political reporters should be covering. And, if you have time, the science reporters can do it, but the health and science people really need to be concentrating on Debbie Birx and the model and Tony Fauci and what we need to do now.
Yeah, I'm surprised we're reading this.
No masks, what do we do? What's the deal? What are the best masks? How do you make them? Should we do this? Don't forget to wash your hands, learn how to take them off. And by the way, stay home. That's the stuff that they should be concentrating on, what we do now. But in terms of what happened and how we got here, don't let the gaslighting fool you.
Yes. Hope it's not. I don't know. I don't really. Thankfully, I always worry when I say I don't know anybody who, because all of a sudden it turns out that there are such
Then you're
people.
Pauline Kael.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who voted against Nixon. You don't want to be that person.
So we can't do that. I'm surprised to see even, I imagine it'll be followed up by a book. But yeah, this missing 6 weeks headline feels like somebody's cooking up a story that they'll hint at or excerpt from their book later on. And it'll take us 6 months to a year to figure out the real in-depth story of what happened during those 6 weeks. But
right now, this is speaking of which, this is from last night at 11:53 p.m. So it's not an April Fool's joke. Breaking: Senator Kelly Loeffler, Republican Georgia, has reported more stock sales amid insider allegation accusations. Among that spate of sales was an interesting stock purchase.
Oh.
She didn't just dump stock in retail
she was
companies.
buying. I remember this. Yeah.
She purchased specifically a company that makes COVID-19 protective garments by an odd coincidence that just happened to be after
I got to see that. Where is this?
I'm about to send it to you.
Good. Breaking news. I'm about to get it, everybody. But not coronavirus, I hope. But this story, good. Although I am concerned about the fact that it's still breaking news about these purchases, because the reason she was caught the first time was she, for whatever reason, people commit these crimes and then they disclose them on their required disclosure forms, which I understand you don't want to be in trouble for non-disclosure, but if you're criming, just go with it. This is my advice, I guess. But now, so what is it? Not only was she doing this, which is terrible, and orders of magnitude worse than what everybody else was doing, it seems, although we'll maybe find out more about what others were doing. But she also, I guess, didn't disclose it in time. Initially we learned that she was buying shares in, I don't remember what the name of the company was, Citrix, that does, home telework, remote conference.
Yeah, I have Citrix on my computer, so we could do hospital at home, viewing.
Mm-hmm. And so she was aware enough to do that. And by the way, that all happened during impeachment. Somehow she was not distracted from that. Right. But wow, so buying stocks in people producing COVID-19 protective garments, and then it all went.
It might be that political operative that I mean, I don't know what she's doing, but I mean, it's just so weird that she had the foresight and prescience to really pick up on that particular company of all things.
And of course, the background.
What a smart person!
I've almost forgotten the original intent of the first round of articles of all this was that not only did she do that, and not only did she cash in on it, but she went out as United States Senator, and told everybody it's nothing, don't worry about it, while she was getting prepared to make money off of you dying on it. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, don't trust the Republican gaslighting on any of this. They are bad people.
Right. Wood chipper. I'm buying wood chipper stocks.
Okay.
Telling you why.
Anyway, we have that. And then the last thing I want to mention is just a little bit on testing.
Because there's no stocks in cliffs. But go on. Yes.
So there's a thing about these new 5-minute tests that are coming out, the 3 minutes, the 2 minutes, the ones you mentioned. Yeah. But one of the big things about California that happened that was real is that because we're relying so heavily on commercial vehicles to get these tests done.
Yes.
Right? Quest. Right. And companies like that. Labs. This is a particular piece about Quest that I came across, which I don't have in my fingertips, but I'll send it to you. But the gist of it is simply this, that Quest said, yeah, we can do this, and of course they couldn't do it. They weren't ready to scale up to this magnitude of testing. And so that's why there's a 67,000, 56,000, depending upon what day, what story you're reading, backlog. I had my test, but I didn't get results back, and I won't get it for 10 days, and what's the point of testing? But then the patient's dead.
Yeah.
Or discharge, or better, whatever. But how does it help me? Right? So a lot of the commercial ability to do testing has been exaggerated by the federal government because it's not in a practical sense it helps the docs. Now, these 5-minute, what they call POC, or point of care tests, which can be in doctor's offices like a rapid flu test, they're supposed to be out next week. If we have the materials and they don't run out, it'll be great to have these tests. That'll make a big difference and can actually be used, for example, to screen healthcare workers coming and going from the hospital.
Yeah, coming back to work. Can't work today.
Can't work today, you're positive, go home. You know, that kind of thing. So it's really great if and when that happens, but you got to see it to believe it. And just because you get a press release in Business Week that says that they're doing this doesn't mean they're doing this, just like with the millions of tests that they promised us that haven't materialized.
Still just purported.
And it's funny because when you watch the press conference, Trump was doing, why was he somber and dumb? Because he was picking and choosing who to answer questions. Oh, there's a question about a lot of people dying. Fauci, you do that one. Yeah. We modeled this.
Well, they were somber.
Put a smiley face on it. Burks, you do that one. Testing, we promised you 27 million tests. We only have 14. Pence, you go up there, you lie to the public, and you explain how that happened.
That's your
Look
fault.
like a sincere choir boy right to the camera and lie to them. You're really good at that. Go ahead. And so that's how that press conference rolled out.
Yeah. Well, that's true. So he just defers to which, I'm glad.
I'm not going to take responsibility. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. I was golfing.
Yeah, well, that's what he's thinking.
There. Oh, wait. You're saying I wasn't there? I was there. I was on top of it.
Yeah.
I was directing everything. I go back to the Saturday Night Live sketch, the classic one with Phil Hartman playing Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the genius.
Yes.
Like in private, he directs everything, and in public, he plays the doddering old man. But as soon as the people leave, he's back to criminal mastermind.
Yeah. If only there was a mastermind somewhere.
Yeah, well, that, back in the days when things were funny.
Yeah, right. Now, of course. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm looking for my 2-minute test. I know I retweeted the exciting news of the 2-minute test, but I guess the fact that I may or may not come up with that tweet for the roundup is, don't worry about it. Someone else will make that claim soon enough anyway, or it'll be 1 minute, and it doesn't really matter unless they make the tests and give them to docs. So.
Right. Anyway, so that's pretty much my summary for today, just so you have an idea what's going on.
Okay. It's a good one. Did we miss anything? I don't know. I know you mentioned the new line of 30 days to slow the spread, and I can at least note for you that the eagle-eyed observers out there were able to juxtapose his tweet from yesterday, 30 days to slow the spread, with his tweet from March 18th, 15 days to slow the spread.
Right. We're changing, 15 days to mitigate the mess, 30 days to slow the spread, 45 days to fix the F up.
I like that they're keeping with the alliteration. That's good.
Right. Yeah. 90 days to do the dirty deed. I mean, they just keep changing their story and moving the goalposts.
Cover the corpses.
And political reporters only cover, how is this going to play?
That rhymes. That's good.
And it's, exactly. What a genius way to PR this. But he said something different yesterday. Well, the news cycle moves so fast. That's old news.
Yeah.
Come on. I want to strangle you. You don't know how to cover this.
Yeah. It's giving me a lot of violent thoughts. But, you keep them mostly to yourself. You can say
mostly,
a few on
except
the radio,
for Twitter, where I don't keep it to myself at all. All right, let me just end with the Jake Sherman
and I'll murder you
piece from yesterday, which I thought summed it up pretty well. Pretty
he went
well.
Back and forth.
So this is how reporters should cover it. Okay. Playbook this morning.
This be the good one.
You'd be forgiven in this time of trouble and distress for wondering whether your federal government has a handle on this pandemic or if it's a complete and utter train wreck.
I would.
First, they told us they had the coronavirus under control. Now they tell us hundreds of thousands of people could die. First, they told us you'd need prolonged physical contact. Now there were reports suggesting disease might be transmitted in the air. First, they told us only old people or those with severely compromised immune systems are at risk. Now people of all ages are dying. First, they told us they would be out of our houses by Easter. Now we're all quarantined, with Virginia suggesting residents can't leave until June. First, they told us we don't need to cover our mouths. Now CDC says they might recommend it. First, they told us tests are available, plentiful, and easy to get. Now we hear stories daily about how some people can't get tested and people are dying before the results are in. First, they told us Google would be building a website to help people figure out if they needed to get tested. Remember that one?
Yes.
And direct them to where to go. And now we see the site is live in just 4 counties in California. And so.
Yes.
So, they have to be held accountable for what they have done. And yes, it's the political reporter's job.
Yes.
It's not my job. Yes, it is. Chuck Todds of the world, move over. If you can't do it right, have other people do it.
And keep an eye on everybody who does it right, because sometimes they'll give you whiplash and do it wrong an hour later. I don't remember exactly what people were complaining about, but a lot of praise for Jake Sherman's summary that was from yesterday morning, the one that you read. And then by afternoon, I saw people saying, what the hell's wrong with you? You were fine this morning. You caught the, idiot virus somewhere along the line. I guess the press conference did something to him, but I don't remember what people's specific complaint was. But, we'll just take what he said yesterday morning. Look, take the good, and I guess you just have to toss the bad or point it out when you see it at the very least, and go on from there.
Right. This is back and forth. He back and me forth.
Oh,
Blake Hounshell writes. Blake Hounshell, of course, is the editorial director for Politico Digital.
Of course.
And Soledad O'Brien was criticizing why political reporters shouldn't be leading pandemic coverage. And Blake Hounshell says, enough of this. It's taken entire teams of journalists to tell the story in its many facets, and the press is by and large doing it extraordinarily well, and the media industry is collapsing around them, but they're still doing their job. It's basically what he said.
There's something to that.
Yeah, and I said to him, well, if you were stunned by yesterday's numbers, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
I mean, it's that simple. Did you or any of President Trump's press conferences prior to yesterday prepare you for yesterday? If the answer is no, you and they are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because we knew this.
I
you
mean,
knew this.
did.
People listening to the show knew this.
Yeah. Yes. I guess so. I mean, I see he's doing it wrong. Certainly, the president is doing it wrong, but yeah, if you were legitimately
the president's doing
stunned,
it wrong, and you're covering it wrong.
Yeah, but I don't understand how people who I thought they were covering it okay in a way, on the spot and in stand-ups, from the White House afterwards, they were not so great. But by the next morning's write-up, they were saying, well, all of this is not true. But so why did you forget that? Why do you forget it from day to day? And, everybody should be Yamiche Alcindor, and they're not. Yes. Why? Can I work
right?
on
Everybody should be in your face saying, but you said yesterday this.
Yes.
And then let Trump yell at you. But ask the question. But you said this yesterday.
Yeah, there are others who can do it, but she does it every day, which is, why are there not more? There should be, it's okay, top of the curve. 3-4 people can do it every day, and 20 of them are occasional players, and then there's the OANN people.
Right, exactly.
But instead, yes, we have a very narrow curve with Yamiche at the top.
Well, Yamiche is peaking, right?
She's
one of the best. I have no criticism of her. I love the way she does it. I'm not saying she shouldn't be at those press conferences, but have the political reporters there. Have Yamiche be the pool reporter, and then have everybody else be the science people.
Yeah, although they haven't all signed up on her team just yet, but many of them have, and seeding questions to her when they skip over her. So I guess there's still people who are competing, and competition's a good thing. If you think you can occupy the top spot, go for it.
Andrew Cuomo had a great point during one of his press conferences about how the private system and the public system, which are completely separate in New York State and New York City, have to cooperatively work together here.
Yeah.
They're not used to it. And he said, let me give you the example, if you're trying to understand this, of the political reporters.
Yes, okay.
How about you all work for the same outlet and you have to share stories? You have to share time. You have to share questions. How about that? Are you used to that? Of course you're not used to that.
No.
They'll push back and say, I can't do that. I got a deadline. I got a job. My job is to scoop the other person. But what if during this crisis you all had to cooperate? And you see how difficult that is? And now imagine how difficult it is at the hospital level.
Yeah, that probably didn't work. But
well, he was talking to reporters. I think it worked with them. They got it.
You think they did? All right. Well, in New York they did. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. You think? We'll see. I'll see if the coverage in New York is any different. I mean, it's an excellent point. I just don't know whether people are going to do it. But I guess you say it sunk in with... Well, but I guess there are national reporters there, too. One of them, our large national newspapers, is in New York, as it turns out.
Yeah, as it turns out. And again, that's the kind of press conference that Cuomo would have at the Javits Center with everybody 30 feet apart,
Yeah, right. Meanwhile,
so it kind of brings home the issue, in terms of what's happening with this.
I guess so. I'm seeing the right-wing take on his press conferences is... all about how he lied and has thousands of ventilators in storage and either is too incompetent to distribute them or is intentionally holding them back. I don't know why
that's the right wing
take clinging to that. Yes, that Cuomo
that
has
sounds
been
bad. That doesn't sound good.
No, it does sound. I don't know why, but they think it's illustrative of Cuomo's corruption. I don't know what they think he's holding out for. I guess because he's Italian-American cash payments or something, even though the president's doing that. But yeah, I don't know.
You see, that stuff collapses on its own. Because when death and dying comes to your town, who was lying?
I don't know. But, the ventilator
I'll just end the segment because it's almost 10 o'clock. But I'll just end the segment by telling you every night in New York at 7 p.m., people stand on their balconies and cheer the healthcare workers, just like in Italy.
Yes, I've seen that
every
in
night.
A couple places. In Atlanta, very much the same
7
way.
p.m. must be when their shift gets out. Whoever thought of that, that's just brilliant.
Yeah, it really is nice. Our hospitals in this area, we don't have a lot of residential towers around them, and they don't empty into plazas, so I feel bad that we can't do that. I did see a great video yesterday of the healthcare workers applauding the hospital cleaning staff.
Yes, as they should.
Which was fantastic. Yeah, right. They haven't had
everybody's
their rounds
helping.
of applause yet.
Your grocer, the person who comes and fixes something during this pandemic while you need. Everybody's a hero here. So that's it.
All right.
Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll rant again.
All right, because the president's terrible, and you will know
He's going to be terrible tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have something to say about it.
Okay, good. Because I'd hate to run out of that or toilet.
You're not going to run out of material for a long, long time.
No, also can't leave the house, so, just as well. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
Take care.
You too. Everyone do that literally. And, we'll be back with more in 2 minutes. Our music isn't quite ready to start yet, but I've got at least 6 minutes of BS in me, 6 seconds of BS in me that'll take us to, there we go, the music. See, I told you, I couldn't get the words out correctly, but it was in there, I promise you. All right, we'll take off down the Twitter timeline and Pocket Archive. I don't know how much of this we can cram in. This has been an amazing couple of weeks. The number of things that are stuck in Pocket. One of these days, I guess, we'll pre-record some of these, maybe a Friday show, and catch up on all the esoterico. Be right back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Here's something to ponder. Maybe the coronavirus is the opportunity we've been looking for, the crisis-tunity, as people say, the crisis opportunity we've been looking for to get out of from under my stupid self-imposed rule about adhering to broadcast standards with respect to the language. I don't know what I think I'm missing out on. Originally, the thinking was, you remember, perhaps in early days of the show, longtime listeners will remember that we had a few local radio stations that actually wanted to pick up the feed and use it on their air, which was at first the original reason that we came up with the 2 and 1 minute breaks during the show. That was actually the request of one of the stations that was broadcasting the show, that they wanted to have station identification breaks at every half hour. And we figured, we can accommodate them. Plus, that gives us a chance to regroup, take a break, run to the bathroom if necessary, grab a cup of water. It all makes good sense. And so we've kept those in as inconvenient as they could be. But with respect to the permissible language on the show, that too was a nod originally to those radio stations that were broadcasting the show. And though there are, I don't think anymore, at this point I don't know whether people are just stealing. You could, I guess, just steal the feed and put it on your local air. I'd never find out about it. I'm lazy and stupid, and I have no way of checking in on these things, and no desire to hire any of the services that will monitor that for you, though it would be nice to know where people are doing that and listening, and we could say hello to them. But at any rate, that's not happening anymore, and no real reason to hold back, and lots of podcasts have made themselves immensely popular by not holding back, and I've even had a couple requests that we not do it, and I don't see that it would do us any great deal of damage, except, I don't know, it says my heart sinks a little bit when I am uploading the podcast and getting set, clicking all the buttons on the settings so that the podcast distribution networks out there, the Apple iTunes and TuneIn and Libsyn and everybody, anywhere, wherever you might pick up the podcast, they want a designation. Look, is it clean, or is there, what do they say? I don't know, strong language, and I don't know what terminology they use. And I keep thinking about, well, a couple of years ago when I was so appreciative of some of the gaming YouTuber people who were out there who were taking care not to scream and curse while they were playing their games, so that my younger kids, when they were watching their video channels, and a phenomenon I still really can't fully grasp or understand, watching other people play video games. I understood, I guess my generation probably was not understandable to my parents and older generations. Why are you playing fake video game baseball when you could be out there playing actual baseball? Of course, that wasn't really entirely true either. It's like we weren't growing up in a neighborhood where there was a sand lot and all the kids gathered and you had enough kids to field 2 baseball teams. You could play baseball meant going out in the street, and I'll hit a ball to my brother, and my brother will get tired of chasing the ball, and then that's the end of the baseball game. So, we didn't really have that many kids running around. So, to me, it was perfectly understandable. Plus, it was fun to play the game. What I don't understand now is, well, if the game is fun, play it. Why are you watching other people play the game? But apparently, you learn strategies and tricks, and sometimes you just have an appreciation for people who are really good at the game, and you watch them and learn and appreciate it. And, a lot of times these gamers are themselves 14-year-old kids. And when my kids were, 11 and 12, I didn't love the idea that the kids were cursing their heads off, or the adults were cursing their heads off while they were playing the game, even though I knew eventually the kids were learning those words and phrases, longer phrases, let's say, and they were learning them eventually, and I knew that they would, or maybe they already knew them. And but it just, it grates on you to hear them blaring that out over their phones or computers. So it felt better for me to be able to click the clean button on all these things. And also, sometimes saying exactly what's on your mind isn't quite as interesting as trying to dodge the bad stuff and come up with euphemisms. But maybe we just let it stand today. I'm thinking it's also easier. Do I want to go back? And sometimes I like putting in those censoring beeps. It's actually kind of funny to hear those beeps pop out, especially when Greg's talking. But maybe we just let it stand for today, or maybe forever. I mean, I don't know what kind of audience loss I think there would be. Are there really people downloading this show saying, "Oh, well, there might be a curse word in there. I can't listen to that political commentary." That appears to be the most popular political commentary going, is people who sit around, and apparently on a stage with several co-hosts, and just curse their heads off. And it seems to be working pretty well for them. So for at least Gil, who asked, why do you hold back? I guess maybe we won't. Maybe coronavirus, maybe just in the time of coronavirus, for a special treat for those of us stuck at home. I don't know. You tell me. If anybody thinks it makes the show worse, I guess, say so. I don't know. Send a note. Use the KITM hashtag if you can. Send it to me in email, however you want to communicate it. But I don't know. I guess at first I thought that maybe there would be some people reluctant to download the show if it wasn't marked clean. But I bet it's very few. All right. There are actual stories that it is now time to cover. I'll switch over to Pocket. Again, so many things catch my eye and my interest on Twitter during the day. That is now by far the number one main source of information, as well as just tips on good stories to share with all of you at this point. And a lot of times I'm so aware of how full Pocket is that I just go with retweets and offhand comments, but then I think, some of these things really should be discussed on the air. So I'll try and do some sort of a mix of items. Let's see. For our resources corner, I'll just give you all a heads up. I saw an interesting video, which, despite the fact that it is in Japanese, and even the writing explaining the procedure is written in Japanese, But it's a video that I think is fairly reasonable in terms of being able to follow it for producing your own cloth masks at home with a no-sew version. Here, I know I've seen a lot of people saying, I haven't had a sewing machine in 100 years or whatever. I wish I still did, or I was never going to be good at it, even when I had it. This producing a no-sew mask that you can wash. It is in Japanese, but I think if you watch it a couple of times, and it's like 13 seconds long, so you can afford to watch it a couple of times, pause it a bit, and get it right. But it, from the outset, the one bit of English that's in it notes that you are working with a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter bolt of cloth here. Is that the right term? Bolt? Can we use that? Of course, that's one thing that it's in English. It's another thing, it's in metric. 50 centimeters, I'm told, is about, I didn't do the math, about 20 inches will do, but you can do the conversion math yourself too. But that seems like a pretty good idea, especially since there's no sewing involved and you can take it apart and unroll the whole thing and put it in the wash. So great idea, forwarded through the grapevine here. So I'll share that with you on our little resources section of our roundup. Let's see. So I had that tucked away in pocket. What else have I got? Here's an interesting story as well. Everything's an oh yeah. One of the more exciting things I hope about the show is I know I could be doing this in a more organized fashion and write out an outline of where I want to go with the show and print out articles and have them all ready to go. But I would find that boring myself to do. You probably wouldn't if they're good stories, but for me, I need to stay interested in the show, so I need to rediscover all these things anew live in order to make this interesting. All right, let's see. Tony Rahm has tweeted this on, senior tech policy reporter for the Washington Post, as well as a contributor to MSNBC. Maybe you've seen him there. New Trump administration officials scrambled to set up system to pay stimulus checks to Americans. I'll read on, and then I'll complain about it. IT issues remain a major concern. Companies like PayPal, Square, Visa have lobbied in recent days to get the IRS to use their tools to help. I should probably dive into the entire article just to see what kind of problems we're talking about. I happened to see this one go by. We can all wave at Armando as he goes by. I think he just tweeted that on with the brief comment of oi, which is quite appropriate. But a good eye, Armando, for this one. This is bad news. Like, what's the freaking problem? I did see the other day that Trump was holding out for, and this is very Trump. Did we cover this? If not, it deserves time too, but who knows where the damn article is now. He wanted to have his signatures on the checks. Remember that we're all supposed to be getting, I don't know what, I no longer have any serious idea of how much the checks are. The number I keep seeing is $1,200, but I keep thinking, is that not, I think that's for people who are getting unemployment checks. The extra $1,200 goes to them, but everybody else is getting something else sort of through the tax system. But I've heard numbers of, families, by the size of your family, you're getting XYZ and then additional money for children under 18. I've been a little bit puzzled by that regime because, for instance, I'm told, okay, as a family of 4, we'll get X dollars plus an extra $500 for our kids under 18, of which we have 1. But how many kids do we now have at home? 2, because one's 19 and home from college, and he's supposed to be, living there, doing his laundry there, eating his meals there. But instead he's here he's not doing the laundry. He's eating the meals, but he's not doing the laundry. But all of that is happening here, for which we would presumably need some extra money, and there's none to be had for that kid. But, other people have worse problems, so we'll focus on them. But here as dumb as the system is that they came up with for paying people, and as dumb as the numbers are that they came up with that they thought people would need, and that I know we've addressed, and people are making this point every day in different and more creative ways, as people realize I can't make ends meet without now that my job's gone, with a $1,200 check, and people are using the opportunity to say, yes, particularly that is true, and we feel for you, but we would like you, if you are the kind of person who used to complain while you had a job, that people who didn't have a job or who were dependent on government benefits for something were splurging on the fantastic free money that they were getting. Now you're going to find out a little bit about how difficult it really is to live on that amount of money. Plus, you'll find out that that calculation of how to give them money was based on minimum wage numbers. And if you haven't found yourself concerned about the minimum wage until just now, well, I don't know what to tell you. Welcome to the club, I guess. Now, the problem I was not anticipating, and I guess, people who don't spend a lot of time thinking about logistics, and we kind of do. So I was still, though, not anticipating this being a problem. How do we get the money to people? Because it seems like the easiest thing in the world. If I have money and you want it, it doesn't sound like I'm going to have a problem getting it to you. I have money, who wants it? And then people will come and get it. But social distancing, you can't, whatever. Plus, of course, millions of checks. But, what's wrong with, we'll write you checks and then send them in the mail, as we do every year for hundreds of millions of people through the tax system. So what's going on? Federal officials scramble to ensure tech glitches, bureaucracy don't delay $1,200 coronavirus checks. Too late for that, of course. Mnuchin already says it's going to, people are, well, you'll get your checks in about 3 weeks, which for a lot of people, like, what? Why am I waiting at all? What are we all doing? I'm sitting at home. What are you doing? Are there not enough people to process these things? Why? Nobody ever, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not certain what's delaying things either. We can read about it. And maybe my concern is, what if the bureaucracy, or what's being reported here euphemistically as glitches in bureaucracy, are Trump insisting that he get to either put his signature, I'm sure he's not saying I want to personally sign all the checks, but I want my signature to appear on it, and that requires some finagling, or might not even be possible, because, we have statutes about who signs treasury checks to make them valid. And I don't think the president, it doesn't say anywhere in the federal code that checks signed by the president are legal, that he has check signing authority. I mean, you'd think he would, but, maybe it was a better idea for financial controlling purposes, particularly with a thief president, not to have that be the case. What if that's what's holding it up? The IRS, it says in our subheader here, plans to send the checks to millions of Americans, but numerous pitfalls could bog things down. I guess one would be all of the Postal Service has coronavirus. U.S. officials are scrambling to stand up a new system to send coronavirus stimulus checks to millions of Americans, raising fresh fears that technical glitches and mismanagement could undermine a centerpiece of the Trump administration's economic recovery effort. The $2 trillion law signed by the president last week calls for payments to be made as rapidly as possible, as the U.S. government looks to put much-needed cash in the hands of people who are out of work, struggling to pay. You know about that. The Treasury Department's ability to meet that congressional mandate hinges on systems it is still bringing online. Where's the one that they use to pay us our tax refunds? Why do you need a new one? I don't know. Let's see if we can find out. In a matter of days, federal officials must craft a website for some people to enter their banking information, so that they don't have to print the checks and they can do it direct. Okay. Beef up their security so that malicious actors can't steal sensitive financial data. I mean, it's a good idea, but they're going to do that anyway. But yes, you should be trying that. But be prepared for that to be a failure. But you should try. And brace to be bombarded by questions from Americans who aren't sure what they're owed and how to obtain the money, which is one of the arguments that was floated in the beginning of this process. This is why you just say flat formula for the amount of money to everybody. How many people are in your family? I guess we have to check that people, but look at their past filings, I guess. And if it matches, it matches. If it's close, it's close. Everybody gets the same amount. Also, of course, the big argument that, everybody wasting time on how to means test the money. We don't want to be giving this money to millionaires and billionaires. True, I understand the concern, but there are two ways to control for that, and for some reason, we're just all stuck in this old thinking of, I guess it makes a certain amount of sense. You want to control things in the first instance. I don't want to send out money that people shouldn't be getting if I can not send out that money and save a stamp or hold on, control the money. But there was a great argument for, just checks for everybody. Hurry up, send them out. If you find out later that the people you sent checks to are billionaires, take it back next time taxes are due. If I send $5,000 to everybody this month, everybody, or every head of household, however you want to do it, and then later realize I've sent $5,000 to Bill Gates. Bill Gates does not need that money. And chances are Bill Gates, might actually end up doing the right thing with it. Some people will, I suppose, turn around and say, I'm donating it. But, I would say this. You donate it if you want to, but be on notice. Come tax time, I know I've got a record of my sending $5,000 to Bill Gates. Bill Gates has no business taking that money. I'm going to take it back. When you file your taxes, there's now going to be a line on there that says, do you make over $1 million a year? Whatever you want to. Yes. Did you declare that on your taxes this year? Yes. If you declared over $1 million in income this year, I know I sent you $5,000. Add $5,000 to your tax bill. Send it back to me. Will we get it from everyone? Will people finagle things? Yes, they will. But it's a pretty decent system. It works pretty well. The tax system, by and large. And if you file and you're showing more income, and I don't care if you're able to find deductions for all that income, that won't matter. For the purposes of this $5,000, that still comes back to me. There is no deduction that can wipe that out. You owe me $5,000. I'll say that ahead of time. Don't spend it. And if you're a millionaire, that will be no problem for you not to spend the $5,000. You can put it in escrow. But we chose the other way. Let's dither. Let's wait. Let's come up with a complicated formula. Let's not even have a system where we can mail checks, I guess. Apparently, we're now stuck in that one. So, why? Where were we? The Treasury Department's, I think, did we read this one or not? Right, we did. Meanwhile, some in Silicon Valley, where all problems are solved, have sought to pitch their products as a potential solution. And maybe they would be. Companies including Square and PayPal, which owns the popular Venmo, so the popular app Venmo. I guess if you thought you were getting out from underneath PayPal by using Venmo, the answer is no. Most of you probably actually knew that already. I didn't, but I don't care about getting out from under PayPal anymore. Well, they have encouraged federal officials to use their cash swapping services to distribute aid promptly to Americans. Maybe. I don't know, there's limitations, there's tech gaps, etc. But, for people who have that, all right. Although, I would say this, flat fee from the government for processing all of them. I'm not letting you take a percentage of each of those distributions. 1, no, you can't have that money. 2, I'm not doing those calculations. So I'll tell you what. I don't know what would be a fair number. I'm giving you $1.5 million to allow anybody who has Venmo to process their payment that way. Great. That's just windfall money. If you make an argument to me that it's eating up more than $1.5 million in resources like your servers or whatever, I'll consider it. But make it a flat fee. But I'm sure we're not that smart. And anyway, it might even be faster to just say, all right, we'll pay the 2.5% or whatever it is that you take. But I would like to hold on to more of that money. So we'll balance things there. 2 people familiar with the conversations who requested anonymity to describe private talks acknowledged it was unlikely the government could quickly broker such an unprecedented arrangement, which would be a boon for those businesses. But again, also, you know what? Fine. Take your standard transaction fee. I don't care what it is. And then, at the end of the year, when you say, we made $1 bazillion on transaction fees from stimulus checks. We say, fantastic. That is what we call income in this country, and here is your income tax bill. And you say, well, but depreciation of our servers, and if President Trump has his way, deducting business lunches as well. So that's all well and good, but it's not coming out of the money which I have an electronic record of you taking percentages of. That percentage, some percentage of that percentage is coming back to me. No deductions allowed. And there, I've taken care of it. On Sunday, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin sounded an optimistic note. That's nice. Pledging at one point that coronavirus support would reach many Americans within 3 weeks, which is a 50% increase from Donald Trump's usual line. Very soon, very soon. 2 weeks, perhaps 2 weeks, perhaps 50% more than that. I said it yesterday. I mean, raise your hand if you believe you're getting that money within 3 weeks. Some people will. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I have my doubts. Who do we punch in the face if it's late? Well, the answer is Steven Mnuchin, but you will be arrested by the Secret Service if you do it. If it is someone else and you punch them in the face, you will be arrested by the regular police. Don't punch them in the face. But, get a pitchfork. Tight timelines and the potential for tech troubles suggest the payments could come out in a staggered fashion. What are the tech problems? I'd like to know. I mean, just interested. Like low on ink? I have that tech trouble. But I don't know. Should the government have that worry? Many Americans who already have bank account data on file with the government could receive payments quickly, but millions of others might have to wait for the money, which can range up to $1,200 for an individual, depending on their income. I guess that's now the system. The other numbers I saw floated are out the window. I guess everybody gets the $1,200 plus more, depending on income, plus more for dependents, I guess. And of course, the people who would have to wait months for their money are the people who don't have electronic bank account data on file with the government, which means people who have less money, the unbanked entirely, and people who have, for whatever reason, relied on the old check system. That tends to be the lower end of the income spectrum, the people who need it faster. By the way, speaking of Steven Mnuchin and tech and printing and issues like that, I've seen plenty of pictures of him and his wife holding up newly printed sheets of U.S. currency. How about print some of that and hand that out? We are getting to the point where people are saying you'd be better off, in fact, tossing cash out of a helicopter over urban areas and just letting it fall where it may. The technology is undermining the stimulus program, said Nina Olson, the executive director of the Center for Taxpayer Rights, which previously served at the IRS as the U.S. taxpayer advocate. Which do we have one of those anymore? Do they just fire that job? Spokespeople for the Treasury Department and the IRS did not respond to requests for comment. The race to release $250 billion in coronavirus stimulus aid has cast a new light on a long understood problem. It's understood, then fix it. The machinery of Washington is often lumbering and in some cases digitally deficient, complicating even the most well-intentioned attempts to provide Americans relief in an economic crisis. And by the way, remember the relief here, $250 billion. It's a $2 trillion bill. So $1 trillion of it would be half. 500 billion would be a quarter. 1/8 of the bill, how do you like that, is for relief of actual people and families. I was asked the other day how much of it is supposed to go. I figured it was about half. I'm wrong. It's 1/8. See, I have an audience now. Yeah, $250 billion of the $2 trillion for direct aid to families, according to this article. So. Everybody line up and fight for it. Twice over the past 2 decades, the IRS has played a critical role in dispersing aid to workers ravaged by an economic downturn, including the 2008 recession, when the agency sent roughly $100 billion in checks to Americans. So now 1.5 times more than that. But the stakes are far more dire as the coronavirus outbreak in the United States continues to worsen. That's probably true, leaving more than 3,000 dead and millions suddenly jobless. The sudden downturn threatens to thrust the country into a prolonged recession unless federal officials can dole out the $2 trillion in new aid to businesses and consumers quickly and effectively. Exactly how and when people receive their share of federal dollars, however, will depend on a mix of still unfolding factors. I will review those factors in the coming 2-minute break and see whether it's worth going on and ranting about this or moving on to something else. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just monitoring the comments here. Yes. Most people think I am wrong, and I think I am. Like I said, I've lost track on which payment scheme it is we're finally settling on. There were some competing models, and I confess I haven't been able to read even the basics of the actual bill itself. I have shopping to do, or whatever, or I had shopping to do, at any rate. So, yes, people are pointing out, and I think we've kind of straightened it out by reading through some of this. Let's see. Boo Rad 7, as a matter of fact, tells us you might want to double check on that $1,200 payout. I think that is separate from any unemployment, and I think everybody gets that check. I believe you have to make below a certain amount. You also get additional for kids. And you do get additional for kids, but as I understood one of the early versions of things, and I think it may even still be true, that you get a payout, or I was reading, or had it read to me the other day, I think, a payout by family size with additional money for kids under 18, although Karen was saying she thought it was for kids under 17. Kids still under 17, so that one will work. And although she says, well, shouldn't an 18-year-old get their own payment? And I guess they should, but I don't think that they are. I thought that they should handle it the same way they handle insurance, like up to 26, if they're living at home. I don't know. Or I thought maybe the idea of making additional payments for dependents. Like, why, if my dependent is 18, what's the difference? I don't know why there was no additional money. And I think a 18, 19-year-old kid, by most reckoning, would, consume more resources, let's say, than a younger child. Although, as it happens, I think it's backwards for our kids. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if this isn't the right article to detail exactly what's happening. I'll just have to sort of spend some time with that offline, unless any of you know offhand and want to just simply declare it or send me an article that I can review. But yeah, I would say it's unlikely that I've got it right, given that I haven't really studied the payment schemes here. But yeah, for some reason, when it was explained to me, the story came across as, I guess the payments go or are based on heads of household, and then a payment for a household depending on how many people are in it. I do understand that the payments are phased out above a certain income level. That too. That again, I think maybe they could have gone the opposite direction with and just simply clawed it back. And taxes, if you are making quote unquote too much, you can get it back later rather than have people on the front end sitting around with calculators trying to figure out whether a check should go to this address or not. But I did think also, I thought that there was payments that were going to go out to everybody regardless of their employment status, and that unemployment insurance beneficiaries were also going, and here's where I thought the $1,200 came in, was that a phased out payment of up to $1,200 per family would be coming on top of the unemployment insurance. But no, it's apparently unconnected to unemployment. And the larger scheme of payments was just a proposal, and I guess never made it through, even though eventually I think they're going to have to end up coming back and doing that anyway, and coming back with more money. Let's see. Let's continue on with a little bit more of this, because this might clear up some of the confusion before I get to the other blockbuster stories, which I haven't been able to get to yet today. Other major government tech projects, including the earliest days of its health insurance portal, remember that, healthcare.gov, they're going to take a shot at Obama here. Can you believe it? Have suffered high-profile meltdowns. If that's all they have to say about it, fine. Adding to the challenge, federal agencies historically have been a coveted target for hackers, a security risk best illustrated when malicious actors in 2014 absconded with records on 21 million people from the Office of Personnel Management. That too will likely happen, and I don't know what to tell you about it. We try anyway. Try to keep it safe. Tear the hackers limb from limb when you find them, but it's going to happen. We can certainly assume this website will be a target that hackers of many stripes, both domestic and international, and kinds will go after, given the amount of money being discussed here, said Tom Gann, the Chief Public Policy Officer for McAfee, the security company. He expressed optimism that the IRS would probably handle refund checks despite past challenges, would handle them properly. The stimulus payments themselves are calculated, here's some answers, based on Americans' income, as reported in either their 2018 or 2019 tax returns. Adults making up to $75,000 a year, which in some of the hardest hit areas, which are major metropolitan areas, doesn't really reach all that high, quite honestly, into the spectrum here. But adults making up to $75,000 a year are eligible for the maximum $1,200 check, which is phased out for higher earners, and they can collect additional benefits for each child, whatever that might mean. Lawmakers and regulators have promised, which means you're not getting it. An estimated 150 million Americans in total may soon see such payments, or, may not. Yet millions of Americans do not file tax returns with the IRS, a category that largely includes low-income families or Social Security recipients who simply do not make enough money in the first place. Under the coronavirus aid package, known as the CARES Act, the IRS has the power to turn to other agencies, including the country's Social Security office, to collect the necessary data to process stimulus checks. Okay, at least they have a system in mind, but yeah, that will create hurdles and problems. Everything always does. But okay, I guess there are some problems that you're going to have to build into the system and accept. But the Treasury Department this week signaled it may take a different approach. It appears to require individuals to submit simple tax returns before they can receive a stimulus check. That seems like a long way around, given that they're also the people less likely to have access to the tax forms, even online. And of course, creating paperwork. I don't know. If you have the Social Security paperwork, go with that. I think there's no question the process will be slower, potentially a lot slower for them who really need it, said Mark W. Everson, vice chairman of Alliant Group and a former IRS commissioner. He also said that the agency's budget has been curtailed in recent years. I wonder how that happened. And its staff has faced the same day-to-day limitations other workers face amid coronavirus, which together threaten to add to the potential for delays. Seeing the government's struggles and hoping to seize on a potential business opportunity, some tech giants and financial behemoths have embarked on a lobbying blitz. In recent days, top lobbyists for Visa have petitioned the Treasury Department to try sending some Americans prepaid debit cards as opposed to physical checks, according to two people familiar with the effort who requested anonymity, blah, blah, blah. In Silicon Valley, meanwhile, companies including PayPal and Square asked the government to consider sending funds digitally to smartphone apps, which people could spend by using their phones or deposit to their bank accounts. Again, all okay with me as long as they're not taking their cut or are taxed on the cut that they do end up having to take. We'll see whether, and also, let's not have any activation fees for prepaid debit cards if we go with Visa. Can we work that out? Some of the tech giants have pitched the Trump administration through lobbying groups, including the Electronic Transaction Association, which publicly has written letters calling on the Trump administration to consider alternative payment options. Jack Dorsey, chief executive of Square, tweeted last week his company hoped to help the federal government disperse stimulus dollars more expediently. Is Jack Dorsey, is that the CEO of Twitter? Is he also the CEO? I mean, he's obviously the chief executive of Square, but is it the same guy, Jack Dorsey? I don't know how much I trust that guy. People need help immediately. That seems true. That's Dorsey saying on the social media site, which he also runs. They sort of, after the fact, point that out. Treasury officials at one point did express an openness to the idea, asking companies as recently as last week to come up with proposals for implementation, according to the two people who described the conversations. But federal aides also raised concerns about how exactly the government could determine the real identity of a person who uses Venmo, Square, or another service. Good question. Square, PayPal, and Visa declined to comment. Jody Kelly, the leader of ETA, the Electronic Transfer Association, said the companies stand ready to help deliver stimulus money quickly and securely. That's nice to know. Another payment app called Zelle, Z-E-L-L-E, confirmed in a statement it had provided options for the government to consider in its response to the current health crisis, but declined to share specifics. Such high-tech options were not available when the U.S. government had to mail checks to people in the last economic recession back in 2008. The IRS found itself bombarded as it sought to manage its duties during tax season while dispensing aid to families in need, who placed in an estimated 118 million calls to the agency just to ask questions, a federal report at the time found. Nevertheless, its checks largely went out over the ensuing months as designed. More than 10 years later, the agency once again is serving in a lead role, managing an economic recovery program at the height of tax season. The phones are likely to ring at record numbers, and the agency similarly has little time to prepare, even less room for error, along with sky-high expectations from White House officials and Americans coping with unprecedented economic stall. People want the money already, said Mark Mazer, the director of the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. It's almost impossible to meet people's expectations of when they want to get a rebate. That's likely true. All stuff to look out for, though. All right, keep an eye on it. Start the counter on your 3 weeks. See if it works for you. And check in on your neighbors, too. All right. Other news that needs catching up on. I mentioned this one earlier. Now I have a source for you. CNN reporting major retailers have opened only, how many? Drive-through testing locations. None available to the general public, by the way. I will use our peanut gallery today. How many major retailers have opened those drive-through testing locations that the president promised? Any guesses? No? Okay. 5 is the answer. 5 drive-through testing locations. And we probably need more than that. Wouldn't you say? I'm not an expert, but okay. Christina Alisi and Caitlin Collins at CNN reporting this. And now all right, I'll read a paragraph or two. The answer is 5. There's more. Maybe we'll discover something else to rant about. Let's see. Right. So Trump announced in the Rose Garden in mid-March, that would have been the 13th, right, that the federal government would partner with private companies to set up drive-through coronavirus testing sites. So how long is that? 13th, 23rd, almost to 20. So 3 weeks. Almost 3 weeks since he did that. He invited chief executives from Target, Walgreens, Walmart, and CVS. You remember all of that? How many of them have coronavirus, by the way? I'm now curious about that. He shook all their hands. The president told attendees he envisioned consumers driving up, getting swabbed, and having their samples sent off to the lab to be tested without having to leave your car. Very American, but very necessary. But guess what? Hasn't come close to being fulfilled. While these retailers have approximately 30,000 locations combined, the Department of Health and Human Services confirmed that only 5 have actually opened these up. And for some reason, none are open to the general public. I guess you have to get a referral to go there. Maybe that's the best way to start them. One drive-through at a CVS in Massachusetts, 3 at 2 Walmarts and a Walgreens in the Chicago area, and another at a Rite Aid in Philadelphia. So also, let me just point out here, when they said that they were going to do this, I thought, Walmart, their parking lots are huge. They could actually do this. Target, their parking lots also tend to be very large. They tend to be in strip malls, and it's a shared parking lot, and the other retailers might get pissed off, but, it's an emergency. Walgreens, CVS, well, they're drugstores. They have a clinic sometimes attached to them, so they might have the personnel to handle it. But the parking lot's not so big necessarily, and they might have to give over their whole parking lot to it. So here's your answer. Not only do they have just 5, only 2 of them are a Walmart, and the rest of them are the small places, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid. But I guess it doesn't matter. If you have only 5, they're going to get overloaded nonetheless. So Massachusetts, Chicago, Philadelphia. 5 locations, 3 cities. Good places to start, but okay. Almost all the locations are offering coronavirus testing. What? Oh, only, okay. They're, because that's what they're supposed to do. But almost all of them are offering testing only to first responders and healthcare workers, which again makes a certain amount of sense, but doesn't come close to being what was promised. And some offer it only to those who fall under those categories and are showing symptoms, which is largely almost bordering on useless at this point. CVS says it's now making testing available to seniors with symptoms in addition to first responders and healthcare workers. So very exciting developments that you were able to get these 5 and 2-minute tests out there. Plus, I understand the swabbing. I think they're improving how traumatic the swabbing is. I saw a diagram the other day of how far up your nose they got to go with a swab. I'm not really sure I understand why that is. They got to get to a certain area, whatever. Seems to me like hopefully they'll come up with something different. But boy, do they have to. They have to really drive that thing home. It is probably very unpleasant, as the president claimed. Okay, there's other stories to get to. So many of them. These I'll save for Friday. The biggest story floating around out there, literally floating around out there, is coronavirus has essentially now disabled a United States Navy aircraft carrier, and maybe the whole group for that matter. I got a New York Times piece on it and a Bloomberg piece on it. They probably say largely the same thing. We'll go with New York Times because reasons. It's here. Captain of aircraft carrier pleads for help as virus cases increase on board. Nightmare scenario. Hadn't thought about it as an issue until recently, even though I don't know why all the other boats floating around on the ocean are poison petri dishes. So why wouldn't the aircraft carriers be as well? But now it takes on a direct national security problem, or includes a national security problem. The USS Theodore Roosevelt is like out of action, out of commission because of this thing, and floating around and saying, what are we going to do with all our sick sailors? And think about how sailors on an aircraft carrier or any Navy vessel are berthed. There's no social distancing on a Navy ship. Can't happen. Plus, they don't have the supplies, and I guess there's hardly any way to get them there. So we have aircraft carrier groups floating around in circles in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know if they're I don't know that we're going to enter battle anytime soon, but I mean, it's supposed to be a big deal when you find out that carrier groups are not battle ready when deployed. I don't know who's going to be able to take advantage of this. Presumably they're all fighting coronavirus in their own navies, but problematic, let's say. Yeah, no, I don't know. Apparently the Russians have their own problems, but they're being very tight-lipped about it and locking down Moscow. Originally they were saying they had no problems, but now they say they're locked down because I don't know. I guess they figured out, Putin should look tough if he's locked down. So, so they are. This captain has had to write a letter to the Navy, which got out in public. It wasn't publicly released, but it was leaked because I guess they weren't getting any response. "We are not at war," the captain of the carrier Theodore Roosevelt wrote. He's right about that, although with the war on coronavirus. "Sailors do not need to die." Not from this, anyway. "If we do not act now, we are failing to properly take care of our most trusted asset, our sailors." Thomas Gibbons Neff and Helene Cooper covering the story. Again, I'll just give you a taste of what's going on. "The captain of an American aircraft carrier deployed to the Pacific Ocean has pleaded with the Pentagon for more help as coronavirus outbreaks aboard his ship continue to spread," officials said Tuesday. Military officials say dozens of sailors have been infected. In a 4-page letter dated Monday, first reported by the San Francisco Chronicle on Tuesday, and they have kept it, by the way, behind a paywall. Pointing that out. Captain Brett E. Crozier laid out the dire situation unfolding aboard the warship, which has more than 4,000 crew members. He described what he said were the Navy's failures to provide him with the proper resources to combat the virus by moving sailors off the vessel. "We are not at war," Captain Crozier wrote. "Sailors do not need to die if we don't act now." Well, we already read this. No more time spent on that. The carrier is currently not floating around in circles, but is docked. Where? Guam. I'm sure that makes no one happy, not least of all the people in Guam, who we would call what? Does anybody know the name for Guamians? I have no idea. I'm sorry about that, Guam. Plus, I'm sorry about sending you 4,000 sailors ever, really, but sick ones to boot. Thomas B. Maudley, the acting Navy Secretary. That's right. Oh, we forgot our sound effect. The acting Navy Secretary. Because why would we have a Navy Secretary, right? Who needs one of those? Well, this acting guy told CNN in an interview that the Navy was working to move sailors off the ship. And I know they have ways of getting sailors off ships. But that there were not enough beds in Guam. I don't know, I assume he means hospital beds even, but I mean, there might not be enough beds in Guam, period, to accommodate the entire crew. Although, if you're on a ship full of coronavirus patients and you don't have coronavirus, and I offer you the chance to, I guess, sleep on the beach in Guam, I mean, I guess you'll go, right? I'm not saying it's a vacation, but I'm saying you'll want to get off the boat. We're having to talk to the government there to see if we can get some hotel space, create some tent-type facilities there, Mr. Maudley said. "We're doing it in a very methodical way because it's not the same as a cruise ship." True, it's not the same as a cruise ship. On the other hand, everyone on board is military, and I know things are different as between the Army and the Navy, etc., let's say, but I sort of feel like, beds and hotel rooms are just not part of the package. Like, D-Day comes around. Are we going to invade Europe? I don't know. Shortage of hotel rooms. Might not be enough beds in Europe for our invasion force. They carry tents, so they did it that way. And Navy personnel aren't carrying the same equipment, obviously. But I understood the Navy to have airplanes and helicopters and boats for sure, right? And if the alternative is I'm going to just sit here until I get coronavirus and die on this tin can, I'll sleep on the beach. I don't know. I have no idea about the Navy logistics about this thing. I'm sure that they're desperate to do that. I'm sure there are commanders who say, fine, get off. But maybe, there's logistics of asymptomatic carriers. I would love for them to sleep on the beach, but I don't want to poison Guam either, right? So I don't know. It's an amazing thing. It's the sort of thing that you might want, I don't know, like one commander who would be the top guy, the chief commander, who would be able to make decisions and get things done. If only we had put a businessman in that job, then he would know how to get things done, right? And get it finished. But it's not happening because the last president wasn't a businessman. 4 years ago, the guy wasn't a businessman, and it's his fault. We inherited a sick Navy and no idea of what to do with them. You know what? I know what the Navy usually does with a whole bunch of sick sailors. They should make hospital ships, just whole ships that are just hospitals. Do we have any of those? I don't know. Anyway, oh yeah, we do. But they're in New York and Los Angeles. They're busy. Who knows how long it would take to get to Guam. They might not be any help in this situation. All right, I'm going to stop with the reading of this thing. I think you get the gist of what's going on. I will read it myself to see if there's any explanation of the logistics, which I always find fascinating. We've got just a few minutes left before it is Justice Putnam's turn to tell you what's wrong with the world. There's the 2-minute thing. FDA authorizes the new 2-minute test for coronavirus. Do they tell us who developed it? FDA issued emergency approval, so we hope it works, to a 2-minute test for coronavirus. Its maker, BodySphere Incorporated. All right. Said Tuesday. Never heard of them. Maybe they're awesome. I hope it involves less invasive swabbing, but I guess it's got to have some. It doesn't really tell you how it works. The new test for BodySphere uses antibodies in the blood to determine current or past infection. So what they do is they put the swab up your nose and then hit it with a mallet until it draws blood and then test it. I assume it's something different, maybe a more, hopefully like a little pinprick sort of thing, if you're going to do a 2-minute thing. All right. We'll keep an eye on that story and see if they get it down to 1 minute by tomorrow. Any other blockbusters? I've got a bunch of other things to share with you. And other stories that we haven't gotten to. Okay, that one we did. I guess I will just throw this one out there. Somewhere buried in Pocket, and I will dig them up, is stories about, Greg mentioned the government website that was supposed to be up and I guess was supposed to help people find out where to go for testing, except it never worked, right? And many of you have probably heard the news, and I think we've probably mentioned it along the way, that the website, when the president touted it, it was Google was stepping in and developing this thing, and it's going to tell everybody where to go for their testing nationwide. The tests never showed up. The drive-through testing centers never showed up. The website never showed up. Plus, Google said, what the hell are you talking about? We haven't done it. As it turned out, there was like a small pilot thing that covered 4 counties in California. And then it turned out that may or may not even be Google. But apparently, Special Agent Jared Kushner assured Trump that this thing was in the works. And then he, I guess, farmed it out to a healthcare technology sort of operation that he used to own part of, and now is in the ownership is in the hands of his brother. So they're doing the work. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're not paying them. I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe he's profiteering just like he always does off of everything. But it's always fishy when, first of all, when Jared Kushner is supposed to fix something, and then when he tries to fix it, he tends to fix it by farming the work out to something owned by his family. And I don't know whether they're getting paid or not. And I don't know whether they're capable of doing it. And it really doesn't look like it. And guess what? The place has never showed up. Somewhere also in Pocket is a story from like now probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, if I can judge time correctly. I don't know. But it was a great story, I think in Vanity Fair. And I'll see if I can dig it up, in which it was reported that Trump was furious with Jared. Not that he's done anything about it or that he feels like he's in a position. I guess he can't do anything to Jared Kushner for some reason. His daughter will get mad at him, and who knows what happens when she's mad at him. But he was pissed because the story was leaking out that Kushner had really talked out of turn here and had told Trump, we got this. You can go ahead and announce this website thing. And it turned out to be a giant embarrassment. all based on exaggerations that Kushner had handed him, and yet Trump keeps, trusting Kushner and handing more to him, and that's, the cycle of disaster that we're stuck in. I'll try and find that one, and we'll catch up on that. We got Thursday and Friday shows still to go here, so we'll be keeping you company during your home confinement. Stay tuned, and if you can't get enough with us, stay tuned as you can today for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. Let's tell you a little bit about what's going on. Susan Rice criticized the Hungarian Prime Minister for using the pandemic in an illegal power grab. We'll be dealing with that soon enough here. On the rest of his menu for the day, Trump's rollback of the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Heard about that, I'm sure, right? Well, it could kill billions of birds. We don't want that in the middle of all this, I'm sure. New Yorkers cheer the city's healthcare workers from their windows every day at 7 p.m., but Trump keeps accusing them of being thieves every day at his virus pressers. And there's more. Wait, I'll tell you after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
There is news that Trump wants to send ventilators abroad as U.S. patients are forced to share. America first. After the break, they move on to the chef's table where furloughed crews from Scandinavian Airlines SAS are taking a 3-day course in basic hospital duties to help Sweden battle the pandemic. Yay, socialism.